Fair enough.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Motor City Metrics podcast here. Episode 051, the AFL MLB Postseason update. I don't know why I decided to announce the name of the episode, but I'm Rogelio Castillo alongside me is Duper. Chris will be along shortly as his computer is taking forever to update. So Chris will be on the podcast tonight. I think Duper, I think Tuesday is going to be a good new episode. Is going to probably drop every Tuesday during the off season. I think Tuesday is a good day for us to do it.
Sounds good.
Basically, I mean, we will eventually, when we go back to the normal schedule, I'll go back to Thursdays, but for now, Tuesday seems to be a good working day. Mondays are a little crazy around my work office, and not to mention too, just seems like news around baseball drops. So, but if you're joining us tonight while watching the Phillies and Diamondbacks, thank you for doing so. And honestly, who was the Monday night game last night? Was it the Chargers and
Cowboys? Chargers, yeah. I think Cowboys won, but I didn't watch a second of it.
I went to the gym last night and I was watching Philly. Just they had Dombrowski somewhere, just going, just shaking his head in approval. This is a guy who, by the way, I thought Zach Willie looked really good last night.
Yes, he does.
And that fastball was getting some swing and miss action on the top of the zone.
Yes, high heat.
Yeah,
no question.
And then you see now, Trey Turner joining on the home run fun. So
I'll tell you, it's especially in the ballpark they're in. They're tailor-made for the ballpark they're in. They got a lot of fly ball hitters. They can reach those seats. Schwarber's gone deep again tonight. He's just built for that. Such an unconventional force from the leadoff spot. I have been a long time fan of Bryce Harper ever since he won the home run derby at the Trop when he was 15 years old for Perfect Game USA or whatever that was. He's been on that radar since, and I have always followed him. I like rooting for the guy. I know some people hate him. I'm a Harper fanatic. Happy for Nick C as well. It's just a good series. I mean, I don't know how it's going to end up here if the Diamondbacks are going to get swept away, but the Diamondbacks have such nice talent too. I follow them a lot because my in-laws live in Arizona. So I've been looking forward to this series. And last night, Philly jumped out, but the Diamondbacks hung around. They tried to get back in it. They got the tying run of the plate a couple times, so that was not bad.
And to see Nick Castellanos be part of a stat like this of Reggie Jackson, 5 home runs in a 3-game span.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It is.
And they're the only players to hit 5 home runs in that. So and I think Reggie Jackson's out. I think he was out in the game. He was out there with, I believe, A-Rod, and I showed a picture of him and Derek Jeter earlier. So, yeah. Good evening, everybody watching us on YouTube chat. So let me see. I'll see how the Chris is doing on the update. But anyway, it was the Diamondbacks are a team. It was weird to see Zach Gallen. Wow. Gallen get punched in the mouth a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
But it was, as far as the intrigue for this series goes, too, I think the one thing about the Diamondbacks is going to keep them in the series is the bullpen. The bullpen, we talked about this last week a little bit. I'll be interested to see how the series goes when they go to Arizona. Yep. And will the Diamondbacks have a true home field advantage? Because that ball is, correct me if I'm wrong, but that ballpark is kind of that's not neutral, right? Is it not? Or really, is it hitter friendly or more pitcher friendly?
I would say it's fairly neutral. It's definitely pitcher friendly to center field. It's kind of a little bit Comerica like out there. And you got to put a pretty good swing on one to get to that pool as well out in right center. But I think I don't know if the numbers say so, but kind of when I've been there, it kind of has that feeling of what Comerica looks like on TV.
Yeah, the whole pool does seem like it's in a different zip code. So, although it's and here's the other thing too, we were talking about, like, there's a couple of schools of thought that came up last week too about the top seeds, whether it was a good idea or not. We'll get to that. There was another one too. Was interesting. Was also the comments that were made by a former about clubhouse etiquette. What was spoken out loud. I wanted to get your thoughts about that too.
Sure.
And I'm going to wait for Chris on that. And then we are going to recap the Arizona Fall League a little bit. Jackson Jobe with a pretty good start. Him and Wilmer Flores were part of the Tiger Battery on Saturday night. And I've been looking for the archives. I didn't look today. I didn't have a chance to look today and see how they pitched. But Jobe, again, top of the zone really well. Used fastball. He was throwing a sweeper. Yeah. So that's been the pitch that I was kind of surprised to see. It wasn't a curve. It was more known as a sweeper. And there's a sweeper craze going on too. Yeah. We got that on there as well.
Yeah, 14 swing and misses.
Yeah, 14 swings and misses. Mm-hmm. Wilmer Flores, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about because he has to have that third pitch, his changeup, in order to stay as a starter. He did get the save, so there might be a case where, who knows, the Tigers might transition him into the bullpen. And we'll talk about, too, the Tiger minor league reliever of the year in Tyler Mattson, who was in the Arizona Fall League last year. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to plenty of that. But let's continue on with our kind of look at the NLCS a little bit, or the postseason in general. The other side of the well, we'll get back to the NLCS. I'll get some thoughts from Chris when he gets back or gets in here. The ALCS, Texas 5-4 over Houston, winning the first two in Houston. You know, we've talked about this before. Teams that get hot at the at the perfect time, and the Rangers. Imagine you're Bruce Bochy last year. Around this time, you're fishing.
Yeah.
Hanging out at home. Now you're involved in a series where you have a chance to be an American hero because let's face it. I mean, is really anybody, and I'll ask everybody in the YouTube chat or anybody listening at home, are you rooting for Houston in the postseason?
I would like to see the Rangers take them out. I really would. I like the depth of their lineup. I think they got some guys who are also very fun to watch. I've always been a big Marcus Semien guy. Seager, always a good player. Adolis Garcia has a lot of swagger to him. He's a lot of fun to watch. Do they have the starting pitching to get there? And when you say getting hot at the right time, Jordan Montgomery might be pitching the best baseball of his life at the perfect time, and that's the kind of kismet that, kind of touches World Series winning baseball teams. It can be as much as that, that one guy who gives them 25 innings in October here and really, really carries them a long way.
Yeah, and this is where I think that the Tigers, or not Tigers rather, but this is where the Houston's playoff experience is going to be tested. I mean, this is the seventh trip in a row for them, the NLCS, and see, even, yeah. And Mitch, good old Mitch, a lot of people are just, as far as Jordan Montgomery goes too. Yes, Stan, you are absolutely correct. Right now you're just hearing the cash register going cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. And it's impressive to watch because this is a guy, correct me if I'm wrong too, but when he was with the Yankees, he had back problems. He had all sorts of injury issues. And there he is now, just, what it kind of reminds me of? This might be a little bit of a stretch, but do you remember the 1999 San Diego Padres and one Sterling Hitchcock?
Sure.
It reminds me of that same kind of Hitchcock vibe to him a little bit, because the reason why I mentioned that is Sterling Hitchcock really caught fire at the perfect time for the Padres. And so far in the postseason, it's not like he's not familiar with the postseason either. This is his third appearance in the postseason, but so far he's been dialed in. I mean, this is far he's already 3 games, 17 innings, 13 strikeouts. He's allowed 20 hits. I mean, with FIP at 2.85, that's not bad.
He's living on the black too. I mean, It's just unbelievable. He is painting corners. That's the fun part to watch. It's pretty cool. Quick shout out. Chris Bondi is in our chat.
Mm-hmm.
The pride of Canada, Chris Bondi. Hello out to Chris. He's a long time from way back on the Detroit News Tiger Talk forum.
Really?
Which was the chat room par excellence back in its day. So I've known Chris for a long time. Very cool to see him here.
Well, welcome, Chris. I'm probably one of the few people that was not in that chat room. Chris was. Everybody talks about that, but I think it was right around the time when I was really into I was in radio at the time, and there was a radio buzz board that I was following along. And while I was still watching baseball, it wasn't as intent as now. I mean, but yeah, that from my understanding, that chat is legendary.
Oh, it was fun. There was a lot of great writers there. People who could have been pro bloggers if they'd wanted to be. It was a real knowledgeable crew. Got a little testy at times, but that's okay.
but here's why I compare him to Sterling Hitchcock. Because Sterling Hitchcock, in 4 starts, 22 innings, 15 hits, 32 strikeouts, and an FIP of 2.18.
Yeah.
And he was the same way. Hitchcock was not much of a guy who could blow you away, but he knew how to pinpoint location and was able to get pitch on the inside, and then he lived on the black as well. And considering this is a time in the era of the late 90s where strikeout stuff is not what it is now, and it was the juice ball era, so you really had to be crafty, really. I mean, honestly, it's just because if you look at some of those teams that were hitting then, it was some of the team ERAs, but Hitchcock really stood out.
One thing I always remember about Sterling Hitchcock, he made a list. I think it was Joe Posnanski who had this list. I don't recall that much. It's a long time ago. But at one point in the game's history, there was a list of pitchers who had a start with 15 strikeouts or more and 0 walks in a game. And there was like 14 pitchers who'd ever done that, right? Because that's obviously a pretty hard achievement. And the list of pitchers who had done that was a who's who of the best pitchers in the history of the game. Truly. The only guy who kind of stuck out like a sore thumb that wasn't was Sterling Hitchcock. But the point was, to be able to spin a game like that, you have to have an insane amount of skill. So for him to, whether it was a fluke or not, for him to get on that list, that's my Sterling Hitchcock memory above all the others.
I mean, Sam mentions Andy Pettitte, but Andy Pettitte's an ace. I mean, to me, Jordan Montgomery has been nothing more than a 3 or 4 starter.
Yeah.
If we're being polite, because he's not, when you think of Andy Pettitte, he's a front starter. He's a horse, and you know what you're getting with Andy Pettitte. So for Montgomery, for him to, I think, put that in the Hitchcock category, because I think Hitchcock was nothing more than, at that point, really same thing. He was like going into that postseason too. What was interesting was he was 12. His numbers 12 and 14 with the ERA of 4.11. I mean, it's kind of unremarkable, And so I think that's, again, not saying that nothing against Hitchcock or Montgomery, but it has that kind of same feel to it too, at least for me, for somebody that's watched a lot of postseason baseball.
So tell me this, if Eduardo Rodriguez leaves and the Tigers made a pursuit of a Jordan Montgomery coming in, I mean, is that pretty much a wash talent-wise for the rotation?
I think it would be a wash. Yeah, I mean, again, it really depends on, as far as what they would make and maximize his pitches. It depends on what the Tigers would have planned. But I think Montgomery is going to be one of those guys now that's going to demand a lot of money, and I don't think the Tigers are going to, as much as people want him in the rotation, I just don't see that happening, because is he a guy is he a complimentary, we're going to use the word complimentary a lot this year.
Yes,
it's going to be the point. It's going to be the point where we're going to say that word, and it's going to have some sort of Pee-wee's Playhouse. We're going to have some sort of sound effect for it.
Yeah. Well, Scott Harris sold that to us. I mean,
yeah,
you're either going to spend for the core or you're going to spend for compliments to the core. He wants to complement his core with free agency. And it's interesting, you look, there's so many ways of doing it. I'm not saying that he's wrong when I say this. It depends on the opportunities that you have in front of you. The Rangers, hey, let's face it, their core is built with free agency. So whether, you think it, that is obviously a way that can work if you do it right. And I've always said the Tigers, the mistake that I felt they made a couple of years ago was coming out of COVID. A lot of teams announced that they were going to sit out the free agents market, right? They just weren't going to do it. And I thought that was a great time to get into the free agent market when your competition is kind of giving it the kiss off. But they didn't. And I think, those are opportunities lost. So I hate writing off an entire free agent market, although I understand some of the views that this current crop may not be as strong as some years.
And as far as Montgomery goes, pitch-wise, I mean, he is pretty much he's fastball, changeup, and he's got a curveball. So he's also, technically he's got 5 pitches too. He's got the fastball, he's got the cutter. And the Tigers are really good at maximizing the cutter and the changeup. So, but again, I don't know if Detroit's his value continues to increase. Now, I mean, if you can look at, he is 30. So that's another kind of thing where is he going to get like a big deal from the Tigers? I think the Tigers are going to start doing that. We're similar to Tampa. And that's kind of like a crossroad. Do you spend money on a pitcher after the age of 30? I personally think really depends on the level of talent. If there's stuff there in the numbers, then of course. But if there's something that be suggestive, like for example, Chris always talks about this when you looked at Jordan Zimmerman's numbers closely before the Tigers signed him with the Nationals, there were shades, there were some sort of signs showing that Tigers weren't exactly going to get their money's worth.
Yeah. Things were heading in the wrong direction.
Right.
Even if it was ever so slightly for some of those numbers, but they were slightly heading in the wrong direction. And that was probably should have been a red flag.
Yeah. Sand in the chat says positional players and mediocre pitchers are good. It really depends on really the mileage on the pitcher, though. I think if you can get a positional player, like case in point, Andy Ibanez comes to mind. You almost got he pretty much had a 2-war season until the end of the year. And that served to be much more valuable than, say, if some of the free agent arms they try to take that are down in Toledo that they were looking at because they had some sort of certain pitch or certain thing they looked at. But I don't really that's a good. I don't know. That's always a good debate whether you should go free agent pitching or go after a positional player. And I think it really depends on age too.
Age is a big factor. Durability. I mean, if I would be loath to sign a pitcher to a long contract who has maybe had 1 or 2 years of 150 innings or more, right?
Yeah.
If they've shown, like for instance, Matt Manning. Let's say he was a free agent. Obviously, he's not, but let's say he was, and he's looked good at times. But he's given you 14 starts a year. Would that be a guy you'd sign to a free agent contract? Ooh.
Yeah.
It would be tough, So I think durability is a big part of it. And I think sometimes that's why position players are viewed a little more favorably in free agency because pitchers are viewed as so brittle at times. Yeah,
and that funny you said that too, because in the chat, Daily Ninja Bees says that the ground contract does not look great, and that was a huge risk for Texas in the first place. Even with his injury history, and so. I mean, if you look at Montgomery's numbers coming into this year, he is at a K rate of 21.4, which is just below the league average of 22.1. So again, do you look at the postseason and go, all right, that's who he really is, or is it the opponents he's facing? And so
I always like what Andrew, I said it a couple weeks ago, I'll say it again. I always like what Andrew Friedman said, sometimes in free agency, you just got to be a little irrational. Just a little, and maybe DeGrom, that might have been an irrational pick. It had a high upside if he had turned out healthy, which he did not. I think a lot of people had a feeling he might not. But, they'd gone all in with so many other free agents. What's one more? They were a little irrational. They went for it. Now, he didn't help, but look where they are. They've committed to a process, and they're 2 games from the World Series.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, like it's the interesting thing about the postseason in a nutshell is you look at here we are, and this was tweeted out earlier in the week. MLB teams that won 91 or more games during the season won 13 in the playoffs.
Yeah.
MLB teams that won 90 or fewer games during the season are 21-9 in the playoffs. So there is, and this is why people are saying there's no reward for excellence. The best, and this is Randy Jesseleri, he said this, and this is what he said. He said, in a nutshell, this is why I hate the expansion of the playoffs to 12 teams. There's no reward for excellence. Unlike other sports, the best teams don't win the preponderance of the time. What is the point of building a truly great team when you're an 84-78 team can knock you off?
It's a reasonable argument to make. There's no question about it. You look at the Dodgers the last few years, they've missed the World Series, even though they've won 100 games plus. They've been built for dominance over 162, but they've come up short in short series baseball. I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, if you're a group that wants to spend, I think you go for the excellence. I think, put it this way, those teams that won 100 games, they didn't lose any money. They spent a lot of money, but I guarantee you they made a lot of money this year. So, I think that's where his argument falls a little bit short. I think in terms of being successful in the postseason, sure, an 88 win team can knock off a 98 win team. We know this. But in terms of spending and trying to build the best team you possibly can, there are very few downsides to that, financially. So when he says there's no incentive to do it, I would bet there's some dollar incentives that are in favor of it.
Yeah, and OBK mentioned the Tigers happened in 1987 without the expanded playoffs. He's right. I mean, look at that 87 team. That was a team that fought tooth and nail. They won 98 games, had a hell of a time against Toronto the last month of the season, where it was them and Toronto basically back and forth the entire time during that season. And that was a time where you look at the Tigers were also, they were starting 40-year-old Darrell Evans at third base because they couldn't, again, for whatever reason, they're like, it's crazy. We can't, we can't get settled in on a third baseman. And there's Chris joining us. Chris, welcome. Hey, there he is. Hey,
can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you sound really good too.
I can't hear you.
Oh, we don't sound that good.
This is not an appearance for dramatic effect. This is an old-fashioned IT issue that is making me 25 minutes late, and I can't hear anything. So outstanding.
Okay.
But it's good to see you, Yoop, and Raj, and everybody in the chat. Let me figure this out.
Okay, I'll put you back on timeout then.
All right. There's nothing. I got nothing.
All right. So we'll go back to him in a second. But you look at this is the thing about 1987 that cracks me up is you look at the standings across the board. They got whooped by the Twins. The Twins were 85-77 that year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the Twins were a younger team. The Royals were only 2.5 back on that team. They were only 2.5 back. I mean, if you think of Milwaukee won 90 games too. If the Brewers were actually in first place in the beginning of the season although they kind of choked it away.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Metrodome. Yeah, don't even remind me you know what, Stan? Screw the Metrodome. F the Metrodome. That
I spent a lot of, I lived in Minneapolis from 97 to 07. I watched a lot of Tiger baseball in that stinking Metrodome. It was a brutal place to watch a game. Even down to little tiny details, like none of the seats down the lines faced home plate. You're always looking out in the outfield. You had to turn your head. It just sucked. So there was nothing good about the Metrodome.
Yeah, the way even like the deflated too. But anyway, getting back to what we're talking about in terms of standings. Yes, I mean, I understand why he would say something like that, where you're getting, quote unquote, not getting the best of the best. But I mean, this goes back to when, I mean, throughout time, this is not just like, it's not a current thing. I understand why the 12 team thing is a thing. I get it. I get this is new thing. But then what about you look at the team, another team that comes to mind too is the 97 World Series, the Marlins. Okay. The 97 Marlins, that team was by far, I mean, it was a team that was built for a season. There's just free agents. That Indians team they faced by far was probably in terms of arguably some of the best talent you will ever see on a team. Okay,
you had 1,000 runs.
Yeah,
I think
1,000 runs.
They scored 1,000 runs.
They scored 1,000 runs. Okay, and they were low. I mean, okay, this is. Okay, let me go with this lineup here. Okay, you had Sandy Alomar just turned 31. You have a young Jim Thome in his prime, going off a season where 40 home runs, 102 RBIs. You have, rest in peace, Tony Fernandez at second base, ageless wonder. He had a pretty good year, 286. Omar Vizquel just hitting his 30 creep, but either way, Matt Williams, 32 home runs. You have Brian Giles, another good young piece. Manny Ramirez, who's not even hit his prime yet. Marquise Grissom in center field. You have David Justice as your DH hitting 33 home runs. No big deal. That team, if you look at that team, actually, you know what's criminal, really? And I always make fun of people from Cleveland about this. You can say what you will about the Tigers not winning a World Series during a period of time where they had arguably the best rotation. They got a guy who Triple Crown.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on the 90 Cleveland team. Those 90s Cleveland teams. I mean, you had Albert Bell, you had Eddie Murray, you had all this talent to win, and you didn't get it done.
Yep. So. Yeah, it is hard to fathom. I mean, what the strike year cost them, maybe, who knows, but still, that they couldn't seal the deal one time is pretty shocking when you look at it. Plus, they had all the buzz of the new stadium. They had record-breaking crowds, fanatic crowds every night, compared to how, in the last decade, Cleveland games are like a morgue even when they're good. That wasn't the case early on when it was called Jacobs Field and they were packing them in. I mean, that was just it was a carnival there. But in the end, they weren't ready for October. Part of it was probably having Charles Nagy as their ace.
Yeah, I mean, then again, this is where Cleveland probably you throw out Jared Wright in Game 7 against, they had Kevin Brown. Kevin Brown was the Marlins. He was just the guy who was twirling. Mm-hmm. But yeah, playoff magic is a thing. Like, we don't want to believe that momentum and all that stuff is just a phrase or rather a made up thing. But playoff baseball has proven that otherwise. But again, I don't know. Like, I don't think there's any way to fix this. Really? Yeah, I don't know.
They're not putting the genie back in the bottle, right? I mean, they're not going back to division winners only. So
yeah,
this is it. This is what we got. And I think, the teams that won a lot of games, they got beat this year, but the next 2 years, it could very easily go back the other way where, the teams that won 102 games stomp somebody and they move on. It's just, it looks bad this year, but let's see if it's a long-term trend. Then if it does become a long trend, then maybe they got to do something, but we'll see.
All right, Chris, we're going to try this again. You still can't hear me. I don't think you can. No. Damn it.
It's good to know he's here, though.
It is good to know he's here. So Chris is lingering.
Check.
We hear you.
We hear you.
I want to troubleshoot it. I hope him troubleshoot this as much as possible. I think it's in his settings where he has to, but I don't know if he can even hear me right now. So, all right. Well, Chris goes back to that. All right, let's continue on. And I'm going to wait till Chris would talk about the Arizona Fall League. But as far as the ALCS goes, because we got sidetracked on talking about the past teams there. The other piece of news I wanted to talk to you about was the Florida Marlins.
Oh, yeah.
I do not, Youper, you've been around long enough to know how much we've made fun of the Florida Marlins on this podcast.
Sure.
The Marlins were a punching bag. Thank you to Jeffrey Loria for a long time.
And they deserved it.
And they deserve it. And they deserve it again, as the Marlins are not. It was reported yesterday, or reported on Monday, that Kim
Ing.
Okay, let me show you. Kim Ing was not coming back, and you come to find out that, well, the Marlins asked her to, after getting into the postseason, you have to report to somebody else.
Shocking. If it's true, shocking. I mean, in some respects, not shocking because it's the Marlins, right?
Yeah.
But just in terms of common sense, I mean, when you look at her background, the way she has built her career and who she has worked for, working her way up to this job, then taking this job, doing a mini strip down of the team, right? Where they had a bad year, and then I was built it back up where they won 15 more games and made the playoffs. Things seemingly in the right direction. Got a lot of pretty good young talent there. Made a lot of nice moves that paid off. And now you're going to tell her, oh, by the way, we're going to hire a new boss for you that you didn't have before that you're going to answer to. I mean, you got to be kidding me. The good news for her is she had an opt-out after this year. It was a mutual option. So she told him to go to hell. And I don't blame her.
Yeah.
Dead. This is the garbage you give me.
You look at her resume. Let's look at her resume for a moment here, okay? She was in the White Sox front office, spent 6 seasons there from 1990 to 1996. She was the Yankees assistant GM for 3 years, 1998 to 2001. A Dodgers assistant GM, 2002 to 2011.
Yep.
Baseball VP of operations for 8 seasons, 2011 to 2019. Marlins GM for last 3 seasons. And she has to answer to somebody else?
Yeah.
Kiss my ass. I mean, no, that's what I would say. Like, I mean, that's probably not what she said. She said it probably much more classier and formal. But yeah, this is another one too. And OBK brings up a good point in the chat. MLB should move both Florida teams elsewhere. Tampa can't fill the stadium for a playoff game. Can't argue that logic. And Deadly Ninjabees, the Marlins went downhill when they changed their uniforms. Yeah, I know the MLS team is embracing like the pink, and they're pulling it off well. Dave Beckham owns the team. I watched the Beckham documentary. That was really good. I got but I got nothing for this. I mean, I don't understand why you're punishing, or I don't want to say punishing, but there's rumors that she could head up to Boston.
Yeah.
She could be like, of course, the rumor that she could be the New York Post's Joel Schumann thinks that she could be the clear number 2 to the new baseball operations David Stearns, who comes over from Milwaukee. That could be a good fit because she is familiar with the New York market. But if you're trying to be imagine going to Miami, knowing full well you're not going to have that. I don't. What do you say to that? You know what I mean? Like, of course you're not going to say no because you're not going to pass up a front office position. But
right,
such a crappy look.
Well, I just think that having the opt out, I think the fact that they were successful this year, it gives her a lot of cover to walk away, right? And say, hey, This is not cool. So I think she's getting mostly positive support from most places. I think the Mets make a lot of sense. But the Red Sox would be amazing to think of a flagship franchise like that with Kim Ing at the helm would be a real statement for what baseball is about and the opportunities that are there.
Chris.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you guys, and it sounds good.
Yeah, you sound really good, man. You sound really crisp, by the way.
Sorry about that. Yeah, you know what I did? I switched browsers. And then when I went there the first time, I could hear stuff, but I couldn't see anything. It was like nothing was working. So sorry for the long delay.
It's okay.
I agree with Youp's point. Get Kim Ing into a nice big market and see what she can do.
So the other thing I want to ask you about this, Chris, as far as if you're of course, GM jobs in baseball are very rare, but could you really take a job in Miami knowing full well that you have what expectation? I don't know what expectations their new owner has. I think he's been owner there for a little while, but I would feel like you would have to have some sort of like escape plan ready to go if you take over as GM down there.
Yeah, I mean, I would think if you are an up and coming Scott Harris type or whatever, you might just wait for the next job to come around, right? Or it might be just like a last gasp for an older candidate, maybe.
Yeah.
But like you said, there's only 30 of those jobs, so it's tough to turn something down like that down. But yeah, I don't know. It's always tough, like not being there in the front office. We don't really know if Kim Ng is any good at her job, right? We assume because the Marlins made the playoffs for the fourth time ever or the first time in 20 years. I don't know what it is, but we're not really counting the 2020 year, right? So third time ever. So you assume she's good at her job, and it's just like, yeah, you get to the playoffs for the first time, and there you want to put somebody above the person who got you there, and it just doesn't. Yeah, it just seems like a weird, bumbling mistake to make.
Well, the thing is, name the GM who are viewed positively in recent past that this has ever happened to, where they bring in a layer above them after they've been successful. I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, I'm, we know. I mean, who was it? Randy Smith was the GM in Detroit, right? And then Dombrowski came in as the president, and he got six games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. Was Sam Fold the GM with the Phillies before Dombrowski got there, or did he come in after?
I think he was there before. I'm pretty sure.
But yeah, I mean, so that's not been a huge issue. But that's some Jimmy Apollo voice. What is that?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure who Jimmy Apollo is.
But yeah, so I don't know if you guys already discussed this, but why isn't Dave Dombrowski in the Hall of Fame?
No, we haven't discussed that, but that's a good segue.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel like I still have jumped in the midstream here, but yeah, it's it is one of those times where you go, well, at least we're not them, even though they made the playoffs. Like there's it can always be worse, I suppose.
I just think it'll be if she's in Boston. I think that'd be great. I wonder if the commissioner's office wants her to work there. I mean, she certainly put the time in there in baseball in front office world. Where seeing her in the commissioner's office wouldn't be shocking. Not the head job, but number 2, number 3, somewhere in there.
You know what though, Walter?
Was it
Chris
Smooth Jimmy Apollo? Was his name Smooth Jimmy Apollo?
Yeah, I have no idea.
That's a deep cut, and I'm a huge Simpsons fan.
Yeah, I was gonna say for you not to get that. That's
Kim Ng did spend time in the MLB office, right?
Yeah, she was there she was the assistant or the VP of operations.
Because I know she was assistant GM at with the Yankees and the Dodgers, White Sox. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And baseball hates when this stuff happens during the playoffs too, right? Like it's ridiculous. So
now, do you think the lady Nacken? I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her first name. Who interviewed for the job supposedly with the Giants? What are the odds of that?
Oh, for a manager?
For a manager,
yeah. Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. Her something Nacken. I'm sorry. I apologize to her for not remembering her first name, but she's been a hitting coach, I believe, in the system, and she interviewed for the manager gig with the Giants, which would be quite the step.
So let's move Jimmy, by the way, Chris. Right now, the Arizona Fall League is going on right now, and Jace Young is DHing tonight, and Justice Bigby is batting ninth and playing left. So the Salt Lake Raptors are on the road. This is the first time I actually seen them on the road game. So
yeah, the way the AFL schedule worked this year is that I think a ton of their games were at home because that stadium needs to be used for something else later in October and November. So they just kind of front loaded it, and I don't know if they're going to be back there much. But all the stadiums are within 35 minutes of each other.
Yeah,
out there. So it's not like you're taking a big road trip, but it does give you a different look.
We'll get back to that when I'll check in when he gets up to the plate here. When he gets up the bat, I'll tune back in there for it. But yeah, so let's go right into the Arizona Fall League. Jackson Jobe doing some things. I was just talking about this a little earlier, not too much because I wanted to get your thoughts about his performance so far against how he's done well against a pretty good crop of prospects. We also have Wilmer Flores, who they were part of that battery on Saturday night, pitching pretty well. And Baseball America continues their Jackson Jobe love. He's been looking good. I don't know, Chris. There's a possibility of just, and we got some questions too. We actually have some questions, and we'll address those too. But I don't know, man. Jackson Jobe is the Tiger minor league report pitcher of the year on just a short bit of work.
Controversial vote.
Very controversial. So, yeah.
I don't know if I don't remember if I said this on our minor league podcast or if it's been mentioned on the show before, but I remember I texted you probably about a month ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, and I said, they're going to be top 100 lists next year where Jobe is ranked ahead of Marcelo Meyer. And then what will the people say? But yeah, so what we've seen from Jackson Jobe is what we saw in West Michigan and on the road and in briefly in Erie. The stuff is outstanding. It's top level stuff, and he's throwing tons of strikes. He's walked a few guys in the AFL, but it's still tons and tons of strikes. At this point, his ceiling is basically limited to how much he can refine the command within the strike zone. I know there's some Keith Law said something about him, too much effort in his delivery, which may hamper his command within the zone a little bit, but the stuff is good enough. And we talked about it. You sent me that tweet, right, where the fastballs down the middle at 95 plus perform better than fastballs on the corner at like 92. It's like, okay, well, whatever. He's averaging 96.5, touching like 98.5 with that sweeper. His changeup is really good. I don't think people really realize that quite yet. He added the cutter. He's been awesome. I will remind people that Joey Wentz didn't give up a run in the AFL last year. So he's not facing big leaguers just yet, but Jackson Jobe's stuff is 3 grades better than Joey Wentz's. So, it's been fun to watch him, and it's Jace Young right there, isn't it?
Yep.
I recognize those hips anywhere.
Yes. Josh Norris was on the Baseball America podcast, and he mentioned I couldn't tell if he was tongue in cheek or if he meant it when talking about Jobe's delivery being a lot of effort, that his hat was falling off. So I'm not sure if he meant that as a criticism or if he was kind of joking or not. I couldn't quite tell.
I think it was a stab at Keith Law, perhaps.
It might have been, yes.
Which would not surprise me because,
I mean, generally speaking, you don't want a guy's hat to fall off. I remember who was the kid from LSU who I want to say got drafted by the Nationals 2-3 years ago. His hat was always falling off on the mound, and we've seen Wilmer Flores will lose his hat, but again, you're talking. You worry about the effort when it's not leading to strikes. Jobe has thrown a ton of strikes. Yeah. Like I said, it's that next step is refining the command in the zone, and so far he doesn't really needed to do that. He might need to at the big league level, but I'm not too worried about that at this moment because, like I said, averaging 97 with the sweeper and a changeup and a cutter.
Yeah, and what's funny too is, so this is how did everyone in the system learn the Bugs Bunny change so quickly? And really, William Flores did cut his hair, by the way. It's a mixture of Robin Long. A lot of the instructions from the top, really from. Oh, he got him. Ooh, I don't know about that pitch, but
rung him up.
But
said it's a strike. It was a strike.
Yeah,
that's a decent called strike.
That was
movement.
I know. I thought that was a little bit outside, but that's just me. No, but as far as changeups go, that was part of the organizational plan across the board. I think. I mean, it's just you could see it with we talked about this with several different pitchers. Brent Hurdler, Gibson Long, all said the Tigers asked them to start throwing a changeup. It started towards the beginning of the process of them throwing. Asked them, hey, can you do it? And so that's
Montero, Lyle Lockhart, he elected to throw kind of more of a split change because that worked better for him. Yeah, and it was something that I think it was an organizational, I don't know if it was a mandate, but it was definitely a priority to get these guys to get that off-speed pitch and get it moving. And, Flores worked on it all year. It flashed maybe close to average a couple times. It wasn't, he didn't throw it a ton. And he might just be a guy who's not going to have that as an offering, but yeah, it's Jobs might be the best in the system. We'll have a tool series coming up. We'll have to discuss that when I have to sit back and think about who else. I mean, that Gibson Long changeup was pretty good too. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know, Reese Olson has a pretty nasty changeup. That came with him though. I think that's always been there, but. I don't know what else. What we got?
Oh.
I haven't paid a ton of attention to Flores. He's been pitching okay. It's funny. Like his max fastball velocity is lower than Jackson Job's average so far. We've got Jerry's pulled all the data for us once again, but he's still. It's basically where it was for most of the year. Maybe a little bit ahead for Flores, but he still manages to get outs because it's got, I think, a good angle and pretty good spin.
By the way, thank you, Stan, for the $9.99. So let me play this one for you.
I don't know what's going on, but I love hearing Pennsylvania.
It reminds me of the drop, this mic drop about Savior, or when the angry gym guys are yelling and they say, "Save your money when you call 1-900 make out with a guy."
Yeah. That's from Adam Sandler's skit on SNL.
Yeah, when they're all like super
1-800 make out with a guy.
Yeah, roided up.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a fun drop from. That's Herder, right?
Yeah, that was Hurdler. Yeah, Brett Hurdler during the championship. Daily Ninja Beans wants to know, did Manning miss change-up day?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he and Jeremy Bonderman missed change-up day. I guess that it's it's one of those things that we've talked about before, and I always forget which one. But some guys are naturally good at pronating their arm. Some are naturally good at supinating, and some guys can't really do it at all. Edwin Jackson never really figured out a change-up.
Right.
Fernando Rodney never really figured out a great breaking ball. But if you're good enough in the other areas, you can make it work. But yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be a huge pitch for Manning. That one GIF from like 5 years ago will live in infamy, where it looked like he had a changeup that broke like 3 feet, and it turned out it was like a 35-mile-an-hour wind that day.
I forgot about that. Oh, by the way, Stan, this is for you. I'm sorry, I should have played this one.
Off the Frickers building.
Mr. Weber.
That's classic.
That's Jim Weber at his finest. So right now, if you're watching or if you're multitasking, you know that the Diamondbacks are down 2-0, Philly top of the sixth. And of course, we're talking about the NLCS a little bit and how Nick Castellanos is kind of course, making history. But just Dave Dombrowski. Let's talk about Dave Dombrowski here for a moment. Here he is on the cusp of, if they win this series, they go to another World Series. This is a team where, I mean, he has spent a little bit. Let's not kid ourselves here. But, man, I mean, it's just...
Yeah.
I don't know. This is maybe the team he has to mess with the most, maybe? I don't know. But just, you look at Kyle Schwarber, you look at some of these guys, and you mentioned this earlier. This is a team that's built for the park. But, man, I mean, this guy should be... It's just like we're watching history here with Dan Dombrowski. Really
Schwarber just homered again, by the way.
It's funny. Yeah, well, Dombrowski has this strange philosophy that is that you should go get good players. It's weird. It's weird.
What a concept, right?
You don't see that a lot. But that's the thing. Like, people hold it back for like, he ruins your farm system. Well, who cares? And also, they're spending their money. Like, okay, well, did that work for the Mets? No. Like, he goes and gets good players, and it seems to be helping.
I just think the thought that's always been with me about Dave Dombrowski is he never operates with fear.
Yeah.
I just don't think he has any fear of failure. Not that he knows that he couldn't possibly fail. I mean, certainly, and he has had failures, but he's not afraid of it ever.
Yeah, I don't want to play poker with Dave Dombrowski. I feel like he's gonna get the tall stack or whatever and just force you into a corner. But and the other thing I was thinking about this is my old Delman Young theory, right? In the postseason, is the most dangerous guys are the ones who swing at everything, because in the postseason, pitchers are throwing more strikes because they don't want to walk you, and they make more mistakes, I think, sometimes because they're like a little bit more nervous. And so I think Castellanos had like the 5th highest swing rate in baseball this year. Like he may have swung more than Javi Baez. He's up there with him. And you get in the playoffs, and it's just it's a laser show out there. So on the other hand, Kyle Schwarber had like the 3rd lowest swinging rate this year, and he's got a bunch of home runs too. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, you're talking Dombrowski. What, he start with the White Sox? I don't know if he helped. He was gone around 86 or so. I don't know what.
Yeah, he got fired by the Hawk Harrelson.
But then, then he builds the Expos to a large degree, right?
Yep.
Builds the Marlins into a World Series champion. The Marlins, we've already discussed the Marlins today, and this was like 3 owners ago, but still, it's the Marlins. Comes to Detroit, 2 World Series, 4 division titles, whatever, unceremoniously leaves, off to Boston, wins a World Series, off to Philadelphia. It's just it's an incredible track record of success. And again, I don't know what it takes as an executive to get into the Hall of Fame, but it seems like he's got the resume for sure.
By the way, he was their farm director for the White Sox from 80 to 82, and then was assistant GM from 82 to 86.
Okay.
So but here's the reason why that's important. White Sox won the division in 83.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a White Sox, had talented players. It's not like they didn't in the 70s, but they just never were able to put anything together. But he moved. Then he was the Expos farm director from 87. Then he was their GM in 88. So I'll give him credit where credit's due, being part of that front office for the White Sox that won the division title in 83. I mean, those White Sox teams were trying to put it together. I mean, you can say, Tony La Russa, but they had a young staff. I mean, they had guys like Richard Dotson, Lamar Hoyt go on, and even like they added a guy by the name of Ron Kittle.
Ron Kittle.
Ron Kittle.
I was confusing him with Ron Karkovice.
Me too. I used to do the same thing.
Yeah.
What are you gonna say, Hooper? I'm sorry.
Well, they had Floyd Bannister was pitching for that team too. He was one of the starters. Yeah.
Legendary Floyd. Sorry.
Floyd Bannister. I forgot about that guy. I really did. Like, didn't he pitch for Baltimore too at some point? Maybe.
I think the Mariners too. He traveled around a little bit, I think, but
Yeah.
he was a pretty good pitcher for the White Sox for a couple of years there. I remember their team. I remember a Sports Illustrated article. Their team saying that year was "Go hard or go home."
Nice.
And that was all over the place in their clubhouse.
Yeah, they also had a guy by the name of Rudy Law too. Like, I don't remember that because I do a lot of. Anyway, but yeah, that's where the legacy of Dombrowski is. I mean, it's just even with the Expos, when you read a book by the guy who is now in jail, up and away, reading what every single GM had to face in Montreal, basically, like, at some points, even getting names on a jersey was considered a super expensive thing where they had to figure that out. They were always, he was handcuffed until but again, Detroit was a little different, but still, nevertheless, what we're witnessing right now with Philly is just smart baseball or smart free agent signings. Whatever the case is, get it done.
I mean, they did what it took to get these big deals. I don't think he was there for Wheeler, was he? I don't think he signed Wheeler.
No, I don't think so.
But he signed Real Muto.
Yeah, and Schwarber, I think, and Castellanos, and traded for Kimbrel. They didn't make a ton of big trades this year. They got Lorenzen, of course, but I don't know. It's just a roster full of guys who can hit home runs, and that works really well in the playoffs if they do it. If they don't hit home runs, not so great. But Mookie Betts, one of the best hitters in baseball, one of the guys who swings the least amount of time. He went over, right? I think he went like 0 for 11 or something like that, and out of the playoffs.
Him and Freddie Freeman combined for like 1 for 22 or something like that.
Yeah, and sometimes that's just a weird aspect of baseball. But if you build your team out of Schwarbers and Castellanoses and Harpers and Turners, you're going to probably be okay at some point.
They're good players and they hit home runs. You're right.
Yeah.
The postseason is about, to me, always been, I always hate it when the playoffs are approaching, you'll always hear some talking head moron talk about the importance of small ball in the playoffs, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's all about short sequences. Guy gets on base, boom, home run, you're up 2-0. Okay. That's what really works in the playoffs. Home runs and defense, no extra outs. And
Yep. What was it? Wasn't it the Braves when they won? It was like Eddie Rosario and that Jorge Soler and Duvall, all these randos just hitting home runs all over the place. It was like, I shouldn't say randos, but you know what I mean. They were all guys they acquired at the All-Star break, I thought, or after.
Once they lost Acuna.
Yeah. So there's something to be said too about even like getting back to the argument we were talking about too, that about these top seeded teams not advancing. It's been that way. I mean, correct me, like the new 12 seeded not getting rewarded for excellence during the regular season, but Tiger fans should know anything. But I mean, 2006, Tigers had a week off before the start of the World Series.
Yeah.
And a Cardinal team that really, on paper, had no business beating them.
Yeah. And to Youp's point, the Tigers went out there and played garbage defense and stopped hitting. And maybe part of that is the layoff, but it's I don't know. We tend to build these narratives in the playoffs, right? Just because it's a shorter period and that's what you do, but it's a different setup. I remember you see that in college basketball sometimes too, where when you get into these tournaments, some teams are just built better for that type of play than this just sort of war of attrition, grind you out over 6 months. And I don't know if you can build you have to build your team to get to the playoffs, right? But so I don't know if you can build it just for these weirdos who love the spotlight and hit home runs. But it's hard to deny when you see guys like Castellanos and Turner and Schwarber and Harper doing this over and over again that there's something to that. I just don't know how you find it.
By the way, Justice Bigby with a walk. That's his another walk.
Justice Bigby be walking.
Be walking.
Justice Big B walking.
Man.
I think that's his 8th or 9th walk in the AFL. That's the thing. Like it's funny. He and Young are not hitting the ball particularly hard or far. I think they've got like 3 doubles between them, but also 16 or 17 walks. So I don't know if they were sent out there with the directive to like, nope, just take your walks, or it's just kind of counterintuitive. You usually expect guys to crush the ball out in Arizona because the ball flies, but so far haven't been seeing that.
Yeah, there's not been. It was he reached on a walk, and other than that, it's been pretty quiet. The Raptors are the only ones that have done anything of consequence so far, as far as it goes on offense. So right now it's 2-0 Salt River in the top of or the bottom of the second against Surprise. I think right now there are 3 teams tied at like 8 and 5 in the AFL. We've got half the season over. I think it goes until the first week in November, but
they used to play 40 games. Now they only play 30, right?
Yeah,
that sounds about right. Yeah, and then the Fall Stars League or Fall Stars game comes right before the end of the season, which is fine. I guess that's probably when you want to celebrate the guys. But we haven't, Hao Yu-Lee, I think, has only played 1 game, which is not terribly unusual. There's usually teams on the so-called taxi squad, right, or players that play like twice a week if they can. And we've seen a little RJ Pettit and a little Tanner Colehep too. Colehep had, I think it was his last outing was the one that was really nice where he struck out the side, but before that he'd struggled a little bit. And Pettit has been kind of up and down too, and Dylan Smith has also been up and down. So I never look down on guys who struggle, pitchers who struggle in the Arizona Fall League, because again, it's a very tough offensive environment or tough pitching environment. It's great for offenses, so it's tough for those guys. But Job is pitching well and Flores is pitching well, so that's nice.
So there was a question in here. Yes, so Christopher, the Tigers did have a week off before they played the Giants, and I remember them making a big deal. That Leland was like, "Oh yeah, we're doing these things to prepare ourselves," and it didn't matter.
Just the big discussion points were that they're not going to do what happened in 2006, where they come out cold and they came out and Pablo Sandoval hit 3 home runs off Justin Verlander or 2 off Verlander.
Yeah.
And in a game that, of course, the Giants hosted because Verlander thought people in the All-Star game just wanted to see him throw hard and didn't try to get outs. And Melky Cabrera, who was suspended for steroid use, hit a bunch of home runs off of him, or I don't know.
Yeah.
But the answer to his question, do you think time hurts or helps the playoff team? I personally think it hurts because you look at the regular baseball season, they have one day off, and you're in that routine the entire season. I mean, you don't really, outside of the All-Star break, it's one day off during the week where you work. Well, you are working. You have 13 straight days of games sometimes, and I think you get in that routine. When your routine is thrown off, I think it throws you off. That's just me. I think it hurts. I think it personally hurts myself.
Let's say it. That's how I feel intuitively as well. I feel like you get out of that rhythm. I'm not a big, person who believes in rhythm, but it like if you're in a pattern and suddenly it changes, you can mess with you. But I think Dan Dombrowski, I thought he ran the numbers and saw that was like 70% of the time the team with more rest wins. Like it was a big favor for the team with more rest. I thought I saw that. That may have been a couple weeks ago. And it might just be one of those things where we don't notice it unless it's the team that has more rest losing. Otherwise, we just go, yeah, all right. So I don't know.
Yeah, again, I think it's because some of the teams are involved in the Dodgers. But then again, Dodgers and Braves, this is typical of them throughout history. I mean, am I right? I mean, this is a thing that both teams have done. I mean, this is not just a recent thing. You can go back to those Braves teams in the 90s. I mean, they won 13 division titles and all that. And then sometimes they would go in as one of the better teams in all of baseball. And guess what? They would lose. So to me, this is nothing new.
And I think Atlanta sports fans would tell you it's the history of their city. It seems like every Atlanta sports team will make the playoffs and have these like superstars and then just fizzle out. Dominique Wilkins says hello.
Yeah, but even those Hawks teams, I mean, not to get too sidetracked, but those Hawks teams, they were like the 4th or 5th seed in a stacked Eastern Conference.
I mean, it was a different era, but but still, it was like, you're pretty good. You got this superstar, and then whoop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you look even, for example, like for example, 95. They beat a 100-win Indian team to win the World Series. I was just talking about this earlier, how stacked those Indian teams were, and somehow the Braves got it done. The following season, in 1996, they go out and win 96 games, have the best record in the National League.
Didn't they start the World Series up 2-0 in that?
On the road. They won
the road.
at Yankee Stadium.
Like 16-year-old Andrew Jones hitting home runs or whatever. I guess he wasn't 16, but it's I don't know.
I mean, look at the Marlins beat the Braves in NLCS. That was a team that won 101 games.
Yeah, well, that's like I said, in playoff scenarios and tournaments, it's really hard to win. It's you really just kind of have to get lucky. I think I saw that you would have to play a 75-game series for the better team to win every time for the like 75 games. So yeah, it's really just it amounts to a coin flip, which is a bummer if you're the really good team, but it's kind of fun if you're the bad team, right? Not the bad team, but the lower ranked team. But I don't know, it doesn't seem to be helping Arizona too much right now.
Yeah, I mean, look at the NLCS in 2001. Seattle won 116 games. Guess who beat them? The Yankees, who won 95. Yeah.
And that one, that was a narrative, right? That was the Yankees had been there before. The Mariners hadn't.
Yeah, and they also beat Oakland, who also won 102 games that year. To me, that's impressive. Kudos to the Yankees for even.
Was that the Moneyball team?
Yeah.
Moneyball
Well, one of them. I mean,
yeah.
That was in the movie. That was the team that lost right in the first 2 minutes of the movie.
Oh yeah.
The only to lose the Diamondbacks. So it's
Well, yeah, one of the great World Series of all time. I
actually really because I thought that Kim.
Yeah, poor Byung and Kim.
Yeah, I thought he was going to come back from that. I really thought that the series was over for him, but nevertheless, in terms of the Arizona Fall League, what the upcoming schedule, they have they'll play until the end of the month. And then the home run derby is November 4th. They got the Fall Stars game on the 5th, and then a couple other games before they have the championship game on November 11th. So we still have plenty of time to hopefully see more of the positional side of things for the Tigers. Hopefully we see some more Justice Bigby out there, get some more at bats from Jace Young, see how that's determined.
A little more third base action for him too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, tonight he is. Yeah, I was mentioning it earlier. He was DH, and tonight playing third was Melendez. Melendez is playing third.
I think Young is DH'd 3 or 4 times now, and played the field 4 times or so. I don't, but he's looked surprisingly strong. Maybe it shouldn't be a surprise with how good he looked at second base. He might just be a gamer.
Yeah.
Just one of those guys who you play him anywhere and he's gonna get the job done.
He's Pete Rose. Like,
Yeah. But other than that, Chris, I wanted to ask your whole actually with the NL or the ALCS too. Houston and Texas. Texas up 2-0 right now in that series. A lot of people think that Houston's going to come back and win that series.
It's the Rangers are another one of those teams that when they get hot, it just seems like they're impossible to get out. I think I saw when Verlander threw 45 pitches before he got a swinging strike, I think, against them, something like that. Corey Seager is another one of those guys who swings at everything but makes a ton of contact and has been having a monster postseason. I wouldn't count the Astros out by any means. We saw the World Series a few years back, right, where the road team won every game. So they've been battle tested like this, but you dig in a pretty big hole going down 0-2 no matter what. So I don't know, what did they say? Alvarez had some sort of norovirus going on. I don't know what it was. And they were chipping away, but Verlander pitched well. The offense couldn't do anything, and Framber Valdez got ambushed, and the offense tried to come back, but there's only so much you can do. So, yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that Game 3 is pretty huge for the Astros.
So it looks like former Tigers legend Joe Mantiply has given up 3 runs.
Ooh.
And the Phillies are up 6-0.
Oh, multiplying the lead.
Yes.
Let's see, how did that happen? It was the Schwarber home run, and then what was a real Muto home run?
Yeah,
double.
Double. All right,
2-run double.
Just
so
power.
We did have a question. So we got a couple questions. We'll get to Twitter questions here in a second. But before we get to the question in the chat by Steve, there's one player on the Rangers that I've watched closely with fascination, and I talked about him a few weeks ago. It's Jonah Heim. Jonah Heim. I love that guy. He grinds out at bats. He's good behind the plate. He's just a classic example of a guy who, he's a switch hitting catcher, which is, to me, how often
unicorn.
It is a unicorn, but he takes really good at bats, and he is there, especially during Seattle. Like when they're playing in Seattle, he was just Seattle had no answer for him.
Yeah, and when we were talking about him, we talked about how his really serpentine path to where he is now, where he was. I want to say he was drafted by the. I don't know,
Orioles.
But he was on. I know he was on Oakland. He drafted by the Orioles. He was on Oakland. He was on Tampa before he made his way to the Rangers, and then, yeah, it's a nice story of perseverance, and also another reminder of sometimes catchers just take longer. They always say that, right? But sometimes it just takes them forever to figure it out because they're so focused on defense and everything else that takes the bat a while to come around. But yeah, that's Chris Young has to be commended for the team he's built there. And again, that's another situation where they spent a bunch of money, but the money they spent seems to have, aside from Jacob deGrom, seems to have paid off so far.
And they also have had some really kind of I don't want to say homegrown talent, but to a certain extent, you look at guys like who they've taken flyers on, like Rodis Garcia comes to mind. You look at Josh Young, he's a homegrown guy. Nathaniel Lowe, that guy.
They got him from the Rays, right?
Right, yeah, but that's my point. That was a guy who I wanted the Tigers to go after a couple of years ago because I thought that.
Yeah, I remember
based
that.
on his splits. Yeah, based on his splits, he looked like he was something that to watch out for. But I was gonna say that's more of a smart trade there. But Simeon, we talked about this earlier, but even you getting production on Mitch Garver, man, Mitch effing Garver. I don't know. Garver.
No, I mean they're a fun team to watch. We're heading, it appears, to a Phillies Rangers World Series, which I think would be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
A lot of offense theoretically, which means 4 1-run games. But I don't know. They're both teams that spend a bunch of money on guys who can hit, and lo and behold, it seems to be happening.
it'd be fun to see the Rangers go for that first World Series title.
For sure, yeah.
That'd be quite the run to make at it.
They were inches away.
The Phillies are how many years removed? About 15 years from their World Series. So they're ready.
2008,
to win.
yeah.
Should be interesting to see. It would be. I think it would probably be the better series. So Steve wants to know, yay or nay on the Tigers making a play for Alex Bregman this offseason?
Well, Bregman's got 1 year left on his deal, I think, and it's like $30 million. Tigers can afford that, sure. I don't know why Houston would be trading him. He is kind of a cornerstone of that franchise right now. I would. I mean, if Houston feels like they need to rebuild for some reason, I suppose they could do that. I'm racking my brain to think of who they have in their system to play third base at an Alex Bregman level. I assume Houston, the way they've operated is just have these guys play out their contracts and head into free agency if they can't work out an extension. But I mean, I'd love Alex Bregman on the Tigers. I do think that part of his production is a small part of his production. I think is comes from playing with that really short left field in Houston. But he's a damn fine player, and it'd be nice to have him at third base. I don't know what it would cost you in terms of prospects.
What's he, about 28?
Yeah, he's 29.
29?
So yeah,
He'll be 30 in March.
Okay.
it was same draft as Dansby Swanson, right? So the Astros must have extended him when he was not quite arbitration eligible yet.
Yeah, but you have Scott Boras is your agent too. That's gonna be. It's not gonna. As much as people don't want to count that as a fact, or some people don't think it's a factor, it definitely is. I mean, this is a guy who's you hire Scott Boras for a reason. Spencer Verbal, that's what that's what you do.
All things being equal, a Boris guy is going to get the free agency, right? I mean, odds are stacked. Not 8 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming he signed one of those, extensions earlier on. I didn't look it up, but I don't know if Boras was his guy back then or what. But
he signed the 5-year, $100 million extension through this year, through 2024. Yeah, for next year rather.
So yeah, I mean, I think that was good money for him back then. But I'm sure he's going to want this will be his big payday, right?
Yeah,
5 years and $100 million is great, but it's not $300 million great, which is what he probably would get. I don't know what he'll get. That's interesting. You have to sit back and look, but I would think it'd at least be like 8 years and $250 million.
Yeah, I mean, even with you could probably sit there and look at factors like, well, he's never hit 30 home runs, or
He hasn't.
No, or no, I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. No, I'm sorry, he's never hit 300. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm an idiot. Okay, no, he's hit 30 home runs twice. He had 31 home runs in 2018. He had 41 in 2019. I was looking at the wrong stat.
2019. Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
I hit 40 home runs in 2019.
No, but I don't know. It's going to be look, honestly, if I'm being like the fan part of me, yes, I would like the Tigers to go after him. But the critical side of me, which is what I usually portray myself in baseball here, yeah, I don't see that happening. I think if he's not a complimentary player, again, we're going to be using the word complimentary. Like I was telling Uper earlier, it's going to be like Pee Wee's Playhouse. So every time we're going to have a sounder for it, we're going to have something like, it's complimentary player.
Wrong!
Or just, I gotta find something that works for it. I'll find something a little better than that. But
it would help. It would be a compliment of some sort, right?
Yeah.
It's different spelling, whatever, but like, hey, you look great.
Yeah.
Complimentary player. Yeah. So I don't know. I just, like I said, I don't see Houston getting rid of him in this offseason, and I can see the Tigers making a run at him the following year, but it's going to be costly, and I don't know. Doesn't seem, like you said, doesn't seem like the sort of thing that they're going to be doing.
That's even a better idea. Deadly Ninja Bees. If we could do it like you can't do that on television. Yeah, Bucket of Slime. Complimentary.
I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, that would be awesome. But I'll have to get our special effects budget up, and we don't have a special effects budget at all. But let's go into the questions on Twitter. We got a couple questions from Steve Butts this evening. So we kind of answered the non-Flores Joe contingent of the Tiger farmhands performing in the AFL. So we did talk about that earlier. His other question was, do you think that the Avila era baseball ops could have ever envisioned the players like Justin Verlander and Nicholas Castellanos would have ever still been this good so many years after they were dealt?
I don't think anybody thought Verlander would continue. Like, Verlander took a step up when he got to Houston. That's been kind of well established that they had all sorts of stuff for him, and he found ways to improve himself. I don't know that any of us thought he was going to pitch like this into his 40s. We knew he was great, right? Well, I mean, he was one of those guys. He felt like a throwback, but like to win a Cy Young last year with like a under 2 ERA or whatever, like I didn't see that coming. But Castellanos was like 27, right? Like
right.
He was like a little kid. Like they knew he. Yeah, that one wasn't great. Like they could have kept him. It was like, we're just getting rid of everything. Everything must go. We're closing the store. And it sucks. We talked about it ad nauseum, right? But the ultimate sin of the Avila era was not getting anything of like high quality in those huge early trades. Yep. Now, some of the later trades have actually turned out okay. The Castellanos one is okay. Alex Lang has been, pitching high leverage for a few years. Michael Fulmer trade ended up looking okay. Sawyer Gibson Long has looked like a solid prospect. Daniel Norris looks great. Some of those deals turned out okay, but not, Jake Rogers for Justin Verlander is not enough as much as we like Jake Rogers. Nothing for J.D. Martinez isn't great. Nothing for Justin Upton. Nothing for Ian Kinsler. None of that's great. That doesn't help much.
But to be fair, so Stan's saying that Nick Castellanos was demanding a lot and he didn't want to play first base. Not necessarily fair either. I mean, but at the same time, he was struggling in right field defensively. We all talked about that too. But the fact that they were saying they made an extension to him and he's like, no, they didn't. Look, I'm gonna. That's a little bit of column A, column B there with that.
And there's a thing. I think there's something to be said for Nick Castellanos as a complimentary player. For as much as he's knocking the crap out of the ball right now, he's like a great fourth or fifth guy on a really good team, rather than the guy you build your team around. And at that point, that would have been basically what they were doing. So
he's a perfect postseason guy. You're right. He is kind of he should be batting fifth on a good team, right? Mm-hmm. But he is the kind of guy, and we've seen many times, he can get red smoking hot for 3 or 4 days and carry you to a couple of wins, no problem at all. And you want guys like that littered into your lineup.
He's a 70s, 80s player, right? Where like before war existed, Castellanos I think would have been more celebrated as a guy who, people would have known like, he's not a great defender, but look at that, 100 RBIs, he's hitting 300, he's got 30 plus home runs. This is a monster. Yeah. And now we go, well, he doesn't ever walk, and he's a terrible defender. So he's not an ideal player, but yeah, it's a game about hitting, and he hits, so that helps.
So Cy Young under 2 ERA was 175 innings. Again, if you look at who won the Cy Young, I mean, in terms of players who won the Cy Young that year.
I just didn't think that Justin Verlander would still be winning Cy Youngs at like age 39 and 40. That's all. I knew he was a great pitcher. He's probably I'm trying to think back to like 2017, right, where he had a couple rough years in a row, and then it felt like for like the final, leading up through August, it was finally like, hey, Verlander's kind of back finally, and then they traded him, and I was like, I couldn't kill him for trading him at the time. The team was obviously heading in the wrong direction, and it was like, this might be like the dead cat bounce for Verlander or whatever. Like, you trade him while you can. I would like to redo that.
I've been wrong a million times. There's no question. So for Justin Verlander, though, back at MCB, I wrote a piece called, and I wanted the Tigers to go after him when he came up at free agency again. The title I called it was Justin Verlander and No Regrets.
Mm-hmm.
Bring him back. And the reason I said was I really felt very strong that he would pitch well into his 40s and do, Cy Youngs, who knows? We can't really count on that. But I felt like he was the competitive person who was going to go out on a high note and try to be Nolan Ryan and pitch into his mid-40s and be effective. I'm not surprised that he's still great. That's just the aura of the guy. I don't have any stats to point to it back then. Just from having watched him for all those years, I would have been stunned if he didn't come back from that Tommy John surgery and went on a mission to kick some ass. And he is, and I'm happy for him. And if he wasn't with the Astros, I'd be rooting for them like crazy to win.
I will say this. There's somebody saying, imagine if we extended Scherzer and Verlander instead of Miggy, how the last 10 years would have turned out. Probably a little bit more, probably about the same. I'll tell you why. Verlander in Sports Illustrated credited Houston for his turnaround. When he was having issues here in Detroit, the doctors here in Detroit couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure it out.
And then I think Kate Upton helped him with like yoga mats or something.
Yeah.
Yoga, he wasn't flexible at all. I think that's how she helped him with his flexibility. But I just, Avila got fired because of bad decisions. I didn't expect JD Martinez to be hitting 30+ home runs 6 years later. Maybe I should have. I mean, he was a great power hitter, but I thought it would be more like his last few years. And then this year he came out and hit 270 with like 35 bombs. It's like, they had a bunch of really good players and they got rid of them all and they didn't get it much in return. And that's why the Tigers are where they are.
Yeah. And look, and the bottom line is this, even with, you look at what Detroit has done, Scott Harris has done with all the medical, they got rid of a lot of people that were around for a long time. And there was a reason why. Look at the results, what they've been able to, all the injuries, all the arms and everything like to that extent. If you're going to tell me that, so when I read that Sports Illustrated article, it blew my mind that they were able to figure out, this, and this, look at the analytics, and like give them all this information that made Verlander a better pitcher. I don't think that would have happened here in Detroit at all. You think during the Ron Gardenhire era? Hell no, man. It's just, the point is, Avila didn't get dick for the trade, end of story, and here we are.
Well, and I'll say, and I had another. We've had this before, and I don't think I'm speaking too out of turn, but I was hanging out this past weekend with a former Cleveland scout for the Guardians, Indians. Yeah, it just so happens to be a neighbor. And he confirmed what we've heard from plenty of scouts before, that the Tigers were not viewed as a very good organization whatsoever in terms of scouting and any of that. Like within their own industry, people are like, those guys don't know what they're doing. And that has started to change in the last few years. So that's good. And I confirmed this from a guy who was in the industry. Wow. So it's tough.
Especially remember when we went to a couple Mud Hen games and we saw the scouts, because we saw it happen. The scouts left at the 5th inning, or even earlier than that in certain cases, or they were too focused talking to a certain reporters. It's not good when
The bloggers stay at the game longer than the actual scouts.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, I'm sure you can do a good job and you're good enough to see who can play and who can't. Right. But, that is your job to go there and judge these players. And it's weird. And yeah, I don't know. It's we heard before, I brought up JD Martinez just a minute ago with, all the stories back then were about how there just weren't any deals there. And we heard from a scout who was with the Orioles at the time. The Orioles GM was like, they didn't call me. I would have offered them something more than that for JD Martinez. So it was just a bad org that it was put together there. And hopefully things are turning around now.
Yeah, I remember hearing the press box overhearing how Avila tried to explain some of the trades, and it's just like, you go like,
that's right.
Yeah, you have an eye-opening experience. You're like, okay, I'm going to get my hot dog and get the hell out of here. I mean, I want to stick around, but it's almost like, I'm going to take a little longer to put my ketchup on my hot dog when I'm in there and when you hear some of those things. But the scout thing is 100% accurate because it was even, like I said, when, yeah, there's stories galore, but we're not going to share them all, obviously, because, yeah. But I'll say you this year, the Seawolves had, when they were doing the championship presentation, they had Tiger guys there. Like they had their pitching people, their development staff there and present. It was there and present at West Michigan. Like we were talking, like we've talked to those guys about a couple players in there. We've had scouts following us on Twitter. We never had scouts following us before on Twitter. That's actually saying, oh, we're a Tiger scout. Before it was like crickets. Like we didn't know, it was mainly other team scouts that follow us, but now it's changing. And again, this is where I think it's different than it was before. And again, until we start seeing it more next year in 2024, but there's more good stories to have. So the last question we had was from Nick Splain, who's guest host on the show before, friend of the show, Nick Splain.
Great
What
guy.
prospects do you guys believe need to have the biggest offseason adjustments to bounce back in 2024? Isaac Pacheco, Peyton Graham, others. Chris, why don't you lead this one off?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are two pretty good names. With Graham, for this year, was just lost to injury for the most part. I think he missed 60-plus games with injury, and we talked about it before that he had actually started figuring some things out. It seemed like, at least statistically, I never got a chance to see him play. I guess I did see him the 1 week that Lakeland was in Bradenton. I guess maybe in St. Louis. Anyway, so maybe I saw him play. But he needed more games, and so next year's a big one for him. Same for Pacheco. Pacheco had a good couple weeks down the stretch, but it was a very tough year for him. Those are guys who do need to make some adjustments, I think. Pacheco's still very young. I think he'll be 21 all of next year, maybe. Turns 21 in December, I want to say. But maybe, and I think, Campos and Christian Santana are guys who need to make some alterations to their game. We thought Santana had figured something out, and then it was back to hitting pop-ups and strikeouts and walking, which is unfortunate. And maybe a couple of the pitchers. Like we've talked about Flores, but Flores had kind of a stagnant year. And Ty Madden showed flashes at times of dominance, and then other times kind of frustratingly hittable. And Raj, you talked about it on our last pod about not being able to get lefties out, so that's a big thing for him. So yeah, I mean, I think those are like the handful of guys I can think of. I think it'll be another big year for Dylan Dingler. He's probably going to get added to the 40-man just because catchers are so hard to find, particularly good defensive catchers. But I mean, I feel like the expectations for his offense have kind of gone off a cliff now.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that list. Uper, what about you? Do you have anybody in mind?
Well, you covered. I was, before we started this and reading the question earlier, Roberto Campos is on my mind. And I think he hit 5 home runs this year. A little bit surprised by that. I was wondering what you guys have seen in terms of, where did some of that home run power is it really there to be unleashed at some point? I don't know what your opinions are on that one.
Well, so we actually, we asked him about that on the media day for the Whitecaps. We asked him directly, like, hey, you hit the ball really hard. How do you hit the ball over the fence more? And he basically said, I'm not thinking about that. I just want to hit the ball hard. And that's what we saw, I think, early in the year was that he was getting fastballs, and he can hit everybody's fastball. He hit Jacob Mizorowski's fastball. He pulled it over like the third baseman's head, which was like 101. I'm like, all right, well, so they know Campos can hit fastballs. So I think the pitchers adjusted and started throwing more breaking balls away, more change-ups, locating the ball away. And he's got good enough bat-to-ball skills that he was making contact. He just was not doing any damage. And so I think he's one of those guys that needs to learn which pitches he can attack and which ones he needs to lay off of. And I think too often he was kind of taking this easy single the opposite way or up the middle. And I don't know if there's ever going to be a ton of loft in his swing. I think there's a lot of some similarity to Justice Bigby's swing, really. It's not a ton of natural loft there. It's just going to have to come via hard contact. So, and we never did figure out what happened to him. I mean, he stopped playing in early August, and we never heard what the injury was, I don't think.
No, I never heard anything at all what was going on with him. But go ahead, Uper.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, Peyton Graham, I was looking his strikeout and walk numbers pretty solid, really. I mean, his on base percentage is like 100 points more than his batting average. So I think there's something to work with there as he gets more experience and he stays healthy. I'm not overly worried about that pick going in the wrong direction. I just got to give him more time. And then hopefully Pacheco, I mean, heck, young guy, 20 years old. Give him, Austin Meadows was in danger of putting down roots for a family in West Michigan if he had stayed there any longer. I mean,
that's
Pacheco's been there a little while.
Yeah, I mean, we're projecting Pacheco to return to West Michigan next year, and maybe for the entire season. Who knows? If he does, he'll still be younger than the average age of Midwest League player, I think.
Yep.
And like you said, Parker Meadows, Winslow Perez were guys who seemed like they just kind of stopped advancing, and then 2 years of struggling, and they figured it out. Pacheco, I think, has the ability to do that. I just he's going to need to work on his swing a little bit more. I think there's too much. It's a little bit of a grooved swing, if you will. It seems like unless the ball's kind of down over the heart of the plate, he has a hard time driving it.
A guy, I mean, we've talked about pretty much everybody on the list, but there's two pitchers that I have in mind too that I think would want to see take a step forward next year. And that's guys like Carlos Pena and Wilkiel Hernandez, because they both were among the top two. They were actually the top two ERAs in the Midwest League this year. And that's nothing to sneeze at. But you also want to know whether there's just org arms or guys that can contribute in Erie next year, because if you look at Erie's rotation, that's going to graduate pretty quickly, whether it's to Toledo or some arms end up in Detroit. But those two arms I'm really intrigued at, because they same thing with Olafgan too. Those are arms that are like that second tier where you're not really sure they're on the border of being org arms or maybe a relief arm, depending on how they're used. And so to me, those are ones that I want to look out for, because if one of them can, we mentioned Santana too. Christian Santana needs to be in that regard. Another guy too, Luke Gold. Can Luke Gold and the Tigers are really high on this guy too, Brady Allen too. We talked about this on the minor league podcast. Luke Gold, Brady Allen. The reason why I say that is because right behind them, they have Kevin McGonigal. They have a couple of guys they drafted Max Anderson. So those guys have to look behind them and go, okay, are these guys going to be on my, shoulders and stuff like that? Are they right behind my back? So
I think for that matter, Danny Soretti, who he got some fans for doing nothing but hitting in low A and high A, and then got up to double A and was struggling this year. And can he hit in the upper minors enough to, move up through the system? So, there's it's the way it is. There are always guys who need to produce, or else they're going to lose their jobs. Unfortunately, right. We saw it this year, I think, with Daniel Cabrera and Gage Workman, right? Like those were guys who had to have big years, and they were part of a championship level team. But it wouldn't shock me if they're both out of the organization by next July. Just the way it works, right? Like if most guys don't make it, unfortunately.
Yeah, guys like Navigato, for example. You said Navigato, right?
I said Cabrera and Workman.
Yeah, but like Navigato comes to mind too. The reason why he comes to mind for me in that regard is because he's a guy who had a really good year, and you want to reward him for that. But unfortunately, where are you going to put him? And that's where therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
So we're gonna watch. Before we get out of here, we're gonna watch Young's at bat here. He did steal second and third, but I was a little slacking on my pimping here and didn't have the
slacking on my pimping.
Slapping on my pimping here. So let's see how he reached base. And now it's all of a sudden jumping really weird. I'm not sure. The $1 million organization, $1 million thing. You can't spend good money on. Yo, Broder, good to see you, man. Matt Broder.
Hey.
The voice of
Matthew Broder. Oh, there you go.
Matthew Broder, the voice of covers the Lions on the Woodward Sports
former baseball player, though.
Yeah, former U of M starter.
Wow.
Former lefty. It wasn't a soft tosser. I don't want to call him a soft tosser because he wasn't a soft tosser. I think it was Matt, you could call yourself a soft tosser. I'm not going to do that. It's entirely up to you. But good to see you in here, man. But yeah, I know it's going to be interesting to see where they're going to be with as far as some of those guys go on the fringe. And I miss you too, Broder, by the way. I should have said that.
Absolutely.
It's long overdue. I actually saw Kool-Aid who covers the Pistons, and we're supposed to get some lunch here sometime soon. So I haven't had a chance to catch up with those guys in a while.
Gonna be ramping up for the Pistons season.
Yeah, and the NBA, I mean, they had open practice. The Pistons had open practice a couple days ago, and yeah, the Lions are the best team in the NFL. What bizarre world have we stepped into, Chris?
I was trying to explain to my son that this is the best time for football in the state of Michigan since probably at least the 1950s or 60s, right? Like, I mean, I guess that doesn't fit for Michigan State fans, unfortunately, right? But you know, the Lions haven't done anything since the 60s, right? And Michigan, this is the best Michigan has been like consistently since at least since the Bo era, and probably since like the 40s.
Yeah,
like where they're, you know, competing for national championships legitimately each year. I guess you could call that legitimate word into question, I suppose, given what happened in the last two playoffs. But yeah, it's a weird time for sports. And then the Red Wings seem like they're getting fun again.
Yeah,
so
they're getting fun. Yeah, it'd be nice to go after Aaron Nola, but I sound like I'm being a negative. I sound like I'm being a dick, but I like for the Tigers to go after a big arm like that. It's just
I would love Aaron Nola. I've talked about it inside the numbers in the past. Like he's like got sneaky Hall of Fame track career numbers so far. Now you always worry about getting pitchers in the wrong side of 30 or whatever, but I would take it. And
they have the money coming off their books they can afford anybody they want to afford. Yeah. Any move they don't make of a player who's willing is a choice they're making. They're not sentenced to anything.
Yeah. No, you're right, Uper. They should spend. By the way, 1991, this was the last time. So Michigan finished 10-2 under Gary Moeller.
They win the Rose Bowl in 91? It's Washington.
Tyrone Wheatley.
That's a Tyrone Wheatley.
That may have been
No, they lost. They lost to Washington.
Yeah,
they lost.
They always lost the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, they always lost the Rose Bowl. And that was the 91 team where the Lions won the wild card. Yeah, so
that was the only like really good Lions team that I can remember in my lifetime. You know, they had a couple teams that made the playoffs, and then Barry Sanders would get held to -6 yards somehow, and
against the Packers at Lambeau.
Yeah.
I remember that.
I'm sure you do. How's Jordan Love treating you?
Yeah.
There's Young stealing second. Nice. There you go. So he did steal third. So I want to see he steals third, and we'll get out of here.
That's funny. You know, he's a like I said, he's a ball player. Yeah. You don't pay attention to him, he's going to steal 2 bags on you.
I would like for the Tigers to sign Aaron Nola. I would like the Tigers to make some smart decisions on who they sign because, again, the realist in me says no, but also at the same time, why not Aaron Nola? That guy, that would be a guy who fit the rotation better.
The Tigers have so much money.
Yeah,
it's
ridiculous.
With Cabrera gone, they've got what's their salary next year? $60 million tops.
Oh, tops.
That's like 40% of that is Javi Baez.
Yeah. Or even the idea of like suggesting trading the idea of the Turk School. Well, that's another story for another day. Yeah, we can debate that all you want, but I just want to see Jace Young steal third here. There's also been kind of talk too about every time that he likes to watch hit. He doesn't hustle. Like that happened a couple of times in Erie, where fans are like, why is he not hustling out of the box? In reference to Young. Yeah.
I mean, he almost hit a grand slam the other day, and was watching it, and ended up being a 3-run double. So that's fine, right? Like he's a guy who hits for a lot of power, and so there are going to be times when he thinks he got it, and the wind messes with it. But I don't think Tigers fans are going to mind too much if Young comes up and actually does hit 30 bombs and walk 80 times. And I don't know if he's going to hit more than 250, 260, but if he hits for power and walks and plays the defense he's capable of playing, he'll be at least an average big leaguer, which is considerably better than I thought he was going to be heading into this season, given what we saw at the end of last year.
Jokes on them. He was running. Let's see here. Oh, we don't see him. Oh, he's not running yet. But no, I like the Tyler O'Neill idea. I've been on that Tyler O'Neill thing since 2020, man. I would love to get him defensively. Jamison Williams of the Tigers farm system, Broder.
Wait, who is?
Oh, I think they said Young is.
Oh, well,
it's not bad of a.
Might be Tyler, or Seth Stevenson is the Jamison Williams of the Tigers farm system.
Yeah.
70 steals.
and 70 steals. No, it's the free agent spending, how they spend the money, though, Richard. That's where I think the Tigers have to be smart about it. And the Michael Lorenzen deal was a pretty smart one. If they could continue to make stuff like that happen. There he goes. There he goes.
No throw.
Nothing.
Yeah, if he caught it in the dirt. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, who are you scared of in the Central? The Tigers dominated the Central this year. Go out and take it. The Twins kind of pulled away at the end, but go get some guys who can help you win games and go win the division.
There's one team that's pretty good. The Twins are a pretty good team. There's nothing wrong with them. They actually played well down the stretch against everybody except the Tigers.
Yeah. Go get it.
Did we celebrate the Tigers World Series? We did. Well, it was funny because somebody tweeted out the David Ortiz home run, and I was just like, why do we do this? Okay, we're going to look back on that. We're not going to look back on that date in 1984 where Alan Trammell hit 2 home runs, Jack Morris. They won the next night they won the World Series. Why do we have to sit there and go, oh, remember the Dave Ortiz thing? No, you know what? It's like the South Park thing. I remember. There's some things I don't want to remember. The Dave Ortiz home run is one of them. Or we always wax poetic about certain players in this town. And it just gets annoying after a while. We have to relive these moments. That right there, brother, is fine by me. But a winning moment. I don't want to remember the David Ortiz thing. Yeah, they are. You're right. Daily Menjib said is right. They're masochists. Yes, Detroit fans are. We love to have this. Anyway.
Yeah.
Go to my deathbed saying they should have kept Drew Smiley in that inning. Damn it.
I'll tell.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda.
We'll tell Leland when we get done.
Yeah.
Hey, Skip. Oh, there you talking about.
Yeah. No, it's wax. I mean, we always do that. We always we do this thing where we always talk about Don Kelly and all these players, these role players, but it's almost like we forget all the good stuff. Am I missing something? Why do we keep?
I know. Yeah, Carlos Guillen should get 10 million times the love.
Yeah,
Don Kelly.
How does Carlos
Ordonez? It happens.
These two guys changed
Ian
Tigers
Kinsler.
baseball, but here we are, Don Kelly. Blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
And we have Jim Wallander.
Jim Wallander. But
yeah, it's okay. I mean, you do you. I'm not. Sounds like I'm being an asshole to people that are rooting these people on. I'm not. But we don't talk about Magley Ordonez enough in this town. We don't talk about Carlos Guillen enough in this town. I'm sorry, we don't. It could be just me, but
no question.
Yeah, or Placido Polanco. That's a good one too. There we go.
Dan Hasty had the great story about Placido Polanco. I don't know if we've ever had him tell that on the show, but they had Polanco on live in their broadcast a couple of years back, and they were asking him a question, and he just quoted Jim Leland directly, including multiple swear words, right on the air. He's like, Placido. He's like, what? Oh. But
yeah, the guy's a ball player. So anyway, all right. On that note, we should end the podcast. Philly's up big time, and look like they're going to be coasting in there. It was a year.
Man,
was it
Reno
has 3 hits.
Reno
Bertoya. Yo.
Raul Casanova.
A flash in the pan from the 60s.
I was going to say, that was a name that was probably before my time. I mean, Raul Casanova. All right, fine. We're not going to. Debbie Cruz. Debbie Cruz had a good first year with the Tigers.
Dane Sardinia. Dusty Ryan.
Sardinia.
Let's just throw out some catchers there. Max St. Pierre.
No Kyler.
Yeah.
So, and welcome back, Chris.
Thanks, old BK. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I appreciate it. Sorry I disappeared. And again, I was not trying to be dramatic today. It was legit IT problems. It sucks.
No, that's all right. But yeah, there's so we'll be back next Tuesday, same time, same bat channel. As we'll also start the minor league stuff. We still have the breakout player of the year that's coming out. We have an article over at TigersMLReport.com. Check out I also just posted today I did a whole video on Tyler Madsen and why he won pitcher of the year. And essentially I just kind of really summarize what Chris said, because I think there's no other way to really discuss that. Good to see you, Rotor. Well, hopefully we'll be seeing each other soon. But yeah, so go to our YouTube page, Tigers Minor League Report. Check that video out and win the voting. By the way, the voting was done by Scott Bentley, Brandon Day, myself, Jerry, and Chris. And
I should have mentioned that in the piece. I felt bad about that, but maybe I'll get them next time.
Yeah, but that was, again, and then our breakout player, which is pretty obvious if you think about it. So that'll be on our website relatively soon. And then our tool series starts. So plenty of content coming out. And we're not even just midway through October. So
nice.
Yeah, it's already the 17th of October. Christ. Man. On that note, we'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.